Welcome to another Swim Easy Speed Pro Camp edition. Today we're going to be looking at Alice Alberts. So Alice is a new pro. She is coached by Natasha Vandermerwe, and she's she's a really good, strong cyclist, strong runner, and it's trying to get her. She's actually a pretty strong swimmer, and trying to get her to swim just a little bit better. So we'll take a look here and start to talk about her stroke, what we worked on. So you can see, again, pretty good line in the water. There's a little bit of an angle downward towards the back. But, again, we've talked about this a lot before in the endless pool, that, one of the things, you've got the current kind of keeping you in place like this, but then some of the current will come over and press your back end down. But one of the things that's pointing out is that, maybe your core isn't strong enough to hold you up in the water, and or it's not as connected as it should be to your lower body, or your lower body isn't as connected to the core as it should be. And one of the things that we talked about with a lot of the athletes during the camp was, very much from a neuromuscular perspective, that, neurons that fire together wire together. So that if you never make the movement, if the brain isn't being driven, isn't being forced to kind of make the movement of, say, kicking, then that part of your body really won't be that connected to the rest of your body in that movement, because the brain doesn't have a lot of experience with it. So those neurons aren't firing together. If they're not firing together, they're not wiring together. And ultimately, that's where a lot of this efficiency in the water comes from. So if you're never kicking, it's going to be tough to get that lower portion of your body connected to your core, connected to the upper portion of the body. And what we want to think about is that the swim stroke, a really fast, efficient swim stroke, is a full-bodied, coordinated, connected movement. And that only happens just from, making that movement over and over again. So here she's looking pretty good. Only breathes to the one side. As a coach, I don't really have a problem with that. It's as long as you're aware of some of the problems that you've got to think about. One of the things that bilateral breathing gets you is it gets you a more balanced stroke. Now, typically people are more comfortable breathing to one side versus the other. And what typically happens, regardless of how much you practice breathing to that uncomfortable side, there's always going to be an issue, typically. And it usually happens where it creates that uncomfortableness on that side of the stroke, creates an issue somewhere else in the stroke. So you get the bilateral, you get the kind of more balanced stroke, but it typically will create an inefficiency somewhere else. So, if we kind of go back here, we'll just rewind it a little bit. So one of the things you can see, and I want you to watch because their left side is going to reach out farther because of that breath. See how the right just stops a little short? So all you have to do is really think about just trying to rotate through the stroke more on that side, on that right side, and it usually kind of balances things out. So, here you can see it looks pretty good. This is kind of all, so you can kind of see this gap right in there. That's for her is probably a good anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds, 100. We just need to get all of this up a little bit more. And that's just this connected more to right there. And then back it up, take a look at the front. So she's press, does a pretty good job starting to pull. Right side looks better. You can see kind of that, you can see this kind of look right here. So she's starting that pull a lot sooner, setting that catch right at the front of the stroke. Elbow is above the wrist, and then starts pulling right about there. I'd prefer to kind of start to see the pull happening right about there, but again, that's going to be these angles on the water. And if she could get into that catch and then start pulling, you can see how much longer that pull is going to be, where she's really going to be generating more propulsion. And then on the left side, it's just a lot of press. So, but that's not unusual for, right-handed athletes where the left side might be a little bit weaker. Okay, so here was the first thing that we looked at where we were like, okay, we've got to work on this. So you can see again that momentum going there. Feet are coming apart. Hip is going out. And we always want to think about, just this really, really straight line running right down the middle of the body, and that we're just rotating off of that. So you can see kind of the little bit of wiggle right there where it's not going that kind of laser pointer straight forward, which is really what we want. You just don't want to waste any kind of energy in swimming because drag is so costly. And here we can see it a little bit better, so if we got midline kind of right there, right about there. I'll try to clean it up. So midline is right there. She comes right. It's right on it inside, just crossing over barely. Left is, in line with the shoulder, so that looks pretty good. And you can see that little bit of bounce inner stroke. We talked about a lot about that in the camp and trying to get that pressure on the hands connected back. So here was some of the other areas that we wanted to work on. So that looks pretty good in terms of that pull right there. So here's the angle right here. She's right at kind of that 100 degrees. That looks good. We could clean it up a little bit. There's probably a little bit more that she could get out of it. But for the most part, that's good. So then you can see on this right side kind of how wide it is outside the stroke. So if we're looking here to there, you're 138 degrees. So call it somewhere between 135, 140. We'll get another look at this in a second. But yeah, she's given up a lot of leverage on the water right there. And then the other thing she's doing is putting a lot of pressure up on her shoulder. And one of the issues that we had with Alice at the camp was she did start to get, as we ramped up the yardage intensity, she was starting to get issues in her shoulder where she was putting all that pressure. So, it was something we were able to manage, and she was able to kind of recover early on. But, yeah, those are some of the issues, especially as a pro, where you're looking to improve your swim. You've got to make sure that technique is good, is solid, because it can really derail kind of any progress, if you get injured, so and can't swim. And then I think we'll go to here's the right side. So you can see kind of, how far outside that body the pull is right there, where all the pressure is just going on the top part of her shoulder. So here we were trying to clean it up. So you can see we just brought out the PVC pipe and just tried to get, the one cue you want to do is, think about really getting long in the water. You want the hand to hit the same spot on that pipe each time. She struggled with a little bit at the start, but we got a lot better towards the end. And everything just needs to be driving straight forward. And the thing about this drill is that until you correct this, until you get everything corrected where it's moving straight forward, you're not going to know what else in the stroke to correct, because this will correct a lot of things sometimes on its own. Once you get everything moving straight forward, it tends to correct a lot of things on its own. And then you can start to refine other things like the kick. And so here was the second thing that we did, was we worked on with the brick, really trying to get her core to engage a lot more while you recruited another muscle group. So while you recruited the kick. So we did it with fins to put even more pressure. The cue you want to do here is, again, long on the water, and try to lift the brick up from your core. Don't try to lift it up from your shoulders. And then this last video, the last clip here is going to be of just kind of the application, what we were able to. So you can see, she's a lot higher in the water. Part of that's the fins, but it's, the movement looks a lot more connected, and there isn't that bounce. So that was kind of the first session that we did with Alice, and Alice had a really good camp and was able to drop a good chunk of time, and I think she really enjoyed it too. So it was a lot of fun to work with her. That was kind of the first session with Alice, and as always, if anyone has any questions, I am more than happy to answer them. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will catch you at the next video.